Now, Nissan brought the Datsun brand back to life to help them charge into ultra-cost competitive markets and segments. And in India, over the last 3 years, we've seen two products from them, the Go hatchback and the Go Plus compact MPV, both of which were sound machines and very well priced, but they didn't help brand Datsun make a mark in the Indian market. But now they are charging deeper into the market with this, the Datsun Redi-Go. It's looking to take on Maruti Suzuki's Alto, Hyundai's Eon, and hoping to match, if not better, its own platform sibling, the Renault Kwid. We've got the Datsun Redi-Go with us for a few hours to see what it's like. Under the skin, the Redi-Go is very closely related to the Renault Kwid. But on the outside, as you can see, they share practically nothing. Sure, the Redi-Go is head-turning, but in a completely different way. It has a strong nose with cool DRLs, a first in this class, embedded low down on the bumper. The sides are heavily sculpted, something that most cost-sensitive cars avoid to keep the costs low. The rear looks like it's high off the ground, and the tail lamp design is a bit quirky. So overall, it is a strong design. And yes, its stance is also completely different from the Kwid. It looks tall, and it is 60mm taller than the Kwid, and it also has 185mm of ground clearance, which is more than the Kwid. But the Redi-Go is very hatch-like, and that's because when you compare it to the Kwid, it's shorter. Its wheelbase has been chopped by 70mm, and overall length is down by 250mm. This also results in boot space being cut down to 222 liters. The upside to that is, the passenger space hasn't been compromised. When it comes to space, in the backseat there is clearly enough. I wouldn't say it's wow, but it is enough. But there is one wow factor to this experience, and that's the sense of airiness inside the cabin. You have good glass area, and along with that you have this high roof, so it really makes the cabin feel very spacious and airy. But width isn't the strongest point of the Redi-Go. Still, there is much to like in the cabin. From the driver's seat, you can certainly appreciate the higher seating position, giving you a nice view of the road ahead. But that's not the only thing you'll appreciate. There's also the dashboard. This is smartly designed, well finished, definitely one of the most appealing dashboards we've seen on a Datsun in India till now. Now, that's not the only thing I like. There's also the seat, very nice and supportive, and in terms of storage there's a lot available here in terms of bottle holders, and then there's this shelf like running under the dash all the way. There's of course also a closed glove box, although it is quite small. What I don't like all that much is this music system here. It looks quite old school. It has a slot for a CD, and of course it has connectivity, thankfully, for USB and auxiliary, but there is no Bluetooth connectivity on this right now. And you can see other places where little corners have been cut. To save costs, you can see that the narrow door pockets don't have plastic inserts to hide the sheet metal, and there's plenty more exposed sheet metal around the cabin. And of course, the rear passengers only get static seat belts. And as we saw on the Kwid, the Redi-Go has only 3 retaining nuts for each wheel. There are flap-type door handles and a single wiper. When you hit the road, you also get the same 800cc 3-cylinder engine from the Kwid. It makes 54 horsepower and 72 Nm of torque. That's identical to the Kwid. It also shares the same 5-speed gearbox. But the Redi-Go is 25 kilograms lighter than the Kwid, and with Datsun claiming best-in-class acceleration for the Redi-Go, we were expecting it to feel quite impressive. Now this engine feels really at home when it's ambling around at low speeds in the city. But even then, it could do with some improvements. One thing's for sure, the throttle response could be smoother. The Redi-Go feels a bit tiring to drive in the city because in stop-go traffic, as you're going on and off the gas, it feels a bit jerky. Also, when you try to overtake another vehicle, you'll find that the mid-range is quite dull. To really get going, you'll have to shift down a gear, let the revs climb to past 3000 RPM, and the engine really starts pulling only once it gets past 4000 RPM. And that's when the lack of refinement becomes all too apparent. As the revs climb, you realize that the engine is really quite audible inside the cabin. It sounds thrashy and it doesn't feel all that smooth either. So despite having the same engine as the Kwid, the Redi-Go ends up feeling a bit crude and disappointing to drive. When it comes to the suspension, the Redi-Go uses McPherson struts up front and a twist beam at the rear. It has 155/80 R13 tires all around. When you couple that with its solid 185mm of ground clearance, taking on rough roads should be no problem at all. For a small car, it tackles the rough stuff with a fair bit of maturity. But now the suspension setup of the Redi-Go feels like it's set on the firmer side. It's probably because it's a taller car with the weight sitting higher up. The side effect of that is that when you go over even lightly rumbly tarmac, you can feel the surface inside the cabin, and over bigger bumps, it does tend to get tossed around a bit. Now going through corners, you will feel the body roll, but the Redi-Go doesn't feel like it's getting out of shape. Sure, it isn't fun, but it feels controlled. And it would have felt even more confident if the steering was a bit more substantial. Now this electrically assisted power steering feels really light at lower speeds, almost a bit toyish. And while it does weigh up as you go faster, I would have liked it to feel a bit more meaty at higher speeds. The Redi-Go comes with disc brakes at the front and drum brakes at the rear. While stopping power was sufficient, the brakes felt a bit wooden on our test car. While there is no ABS on offer, Datsun will offer a driver side airbag as an option on the Redi-Go. So the Redi-Go, it looks set to take the Datsun story forward in the Indian market by bringing in a much needed dash of appeal by way of its design and its interiors, which just feel better finished and more appealing. Well, it does good justice to the Urban Cross tag as well, with its ground clearance, seating position, spacious cabin that feels particularly very airy. Where the Datsun Redi-Go feels a bit underwhelming is in the way it drives. Whether it's the ride quality, the performance from the engine, or the experience inside the cabin, the level of refinement, it just feels a bit rough-edged. But don't sign off or judge the Datsun Redi-Go just yet, because Datsun promised that this will be launched with the best-in-class cost of ownership and a really attractive price tag. And for the intended customer who will be upgrading to a four-wheeler for the very first time, this should make for quite an attractive package. But we'll know really what's what when it is launched at the beginning of June.